Race 3 of the weekend for the FIA Formula 3 European Championship is round 21 of the 30-race season, and it has given us two different race winners already this weekend. Lance Stroll won race 1, and George Russell has won the second race of the weekend. And now the grid is going to be shaping for race 3 based on a driver's second best time in the qualifying session 2, with George Russell on pole position, Joel Eriksson starting with him at the front of the grid, and then Ben Barnicoat, who had to start from the pit lane yesterday after problems at the start of the green flag lap, third ahead of Callum Ilott. He's one of the many race winners this year. Indeed, out of that leading 5 on the grid, only Joel Eriksson has yet to be a victor in the championship this year. Antoine Hubert having won at Norris Ring, for example. Nikita Mazepin's car ground to a halt in race 2 yesterday. David Beckman had damage. Maximilian Gunter's car faded. Lance Stroll had a puncture. Nick Cassidy went into the gravel. So everybody across the top 10 has seemingly a story to tell. Pedro Piquet starting 16th. He had his best of the year yesterday, finishing in 6th place. And this race, 33 minutes plus 1 lap, will be getting underway in about 15 minutes' time. The drivers making their way round onto the grid, and then we shall be looking forward to what promises to be another intriguing race. Yesterday, we had a first race rather affected by rain, and therefore a safety car start. The second race had the traditional Spa drama early on, with lots of slipstreaming going up towards Le Con, but once George Russell had got himself through into the lead at the expense of Joel Eriksson, then he just drove away from the opposition, and he was able to build a very commanding advantage indeed. Sergio Sette Camara has had an engine change after race 2, and therefore he has to suffer the 10th place grid drop for the next 3 races, and this of course is the first of them. So big disappointment for Sergio Sette Camara, who will start at the very back of the grid for this race. Cars making their way in some cases through the pit lane for one further lap. There's also been a grid drop of 5 places for Nico Kari for an incident yesterday. So it's both of the Red Bull Motor Park cars that will be condemned to start a little bit further down the order than they had desired. There is Ben Barnicoat, double winner this year, first year in Formula 3, but Ben having had dramas yesterday. The car just would not fire up at the green flag lap. It had to be pushed into the pit lane. He had to start from there, and he got himself up into 11th place, just out of the points. It seemed as though the steering wheel wouldn't select a gear. That seemed to be the real problem, but eventually a new steering wheel or a electrical reset sorted the problem out, and he was able to join in. But from then it was hard to make progress. Once he got through the first half of the field, it became much more difficult. There's Alessio Lorandi, winner at Pau this year, one of the 8 different winners that we've had in the championship this season. Alessio Lorandi making his way down the pit lane. So they get an extra formation lap, effectively. They come down the pit lane and then can do one more round onto the grid. Not often you see mounted police at a motor race, but there in the fan village on the outside of the old pit straight, there's the evidence of it. As ever, for the total 24 hours of Spa, big crowd on hand here, and the FIA European Formula 3 Championship part of the support programme. There's Pedro Piquet with 6th place yesterday, that best result of his brief F3 career in the European Championship, being a very welcome one. He makes his way through to the grid. 33 minutes plus a lap will be the duration of this race. For the fans looking on, they see George Russell, the pole position driver, stationary at the bus stop. Now, hopefully that's not a problem. So George Russell should be the man on pole position, but he has stopped at the bus stop. Now, is that because he's got a problem? We'll have to keep an eye to that and hope that it's not another high-tech car like yesterday in Ben Barnicoat that has been condemned to start from the pit lane. The car may have just had to slow and then stall. It could be something fairly innocuous, but we'll keep an eye and see whether George Russell's car fires up. He's not the only one seemingly needing some attention. Sergio Sette Camara there comes through, but George Russell does get going, so all is good, and he makes his way now up towards the front of the grid here. Sergio Sette Camara for Motor Park starting at the back, George Russell at the front there, Mikkel Jensen. Why are they all taking such a... unless some of them are thinking they'll go into the pits and then being told not to, and that's why they're then having to swing across that green strip back onto the tarmac, back onto the grid, because the pit lane may well be closing soon, and they're having to steer away from that. So all is good. George Russell making his way up towards the grid. So too there is Antoine Hubert, Norris Ring winner. And there is the Frenchman driving for Van Amersfoort Racing. Antoine, one of the rookies in the championship this year. George Russell, though, out of the car. It's time for a splash and dash, I think, before he gets into the serious business of going racing. Now, Ben Barnicoat's travails yesterday were to do with a steering wheel. The steering wheel itself had a glitch and wouldn't find any gears, so they didn't replace it, but they did a reboot. I think in the coverage of that race, we saw them yesterday putting the steering wheel back on and checking it would go up and down and displaying the gear. So it was the steering wheel, modern technology and all that, not delivering what it should have done by finding gears. Nikita Mazepin in the second race yesterday was a fuel pump failure, and Sergio Sette Camara's engine change and the grid penalty is accounted for with him at the back as well. There on the grid is 24, which is Ben Barnicoat. And there is the Racing Steps Foundation backed driver, Ben, who certainly worked really hard yesterday to try to get into the points, but when he came up against Nico Kari, it was to no avail. He just could not find a way past. Fourth on the grid there, Callum Eilert. Now, Callum's weekend started badly in as much as he couldn't really get a lap together properly in Q1 and started the first race at the back of the grid, but he's a double winner this year, no longer part of the Red Bull family, and therefore, you could argue, no longer part of all the pressure that goes with being part of the Red Bull family. And the release of that pressure and more experience, and maybe a nice friendly team like Van Amersfoort has all contributed to bringing him further up the grid. His teammate Antoine Hubert lines up ready to go. Antoine, another of the rookie drivers in the championship this year, and showing good pace as well, having progressed into Formula 3 this season. A little bit of work being done by the VAR guys at the very front of that car. Hopefully nothing to fear, and he'll be good to go in a moment. And there is Nikita Mazepin, Formula Renault driver last year, moving up into Formula 3 this season. Began in karting and then had just his Formula Renault NEC season last year. His father's family money helping High-Tech GP, and the Russian driver hoping for better with that fuel pump problem of yesterday. Prema yesterday, the Prema cars struggled, as they had in qualifying really, for setup, so they struggled yesterday with a lack of grip and the tyres overheating and the tyres going off, so they're keen to try and get on top of that. There's David Beckman in the Custard Adherence Fancy Muka Motorsport car. David Beckman, who had a moment largely because he got collected by his teammate Mikkel Jensen yesterday, and it damaged the front wing. So when that started to go underneath the car, the only option was to pit, and that cost him more time. Maximilian Günther yesterday started to fade, and that was all to do with the tyres going off, so he fell down the order, and as he lost places, there was never any suggestion that he had the grit level to fight back. It really was a big frustration for Günther, this long slide down the order. So he was able in the end to salvage some points out of the race, because he finished in the end of the race yesterday, Maximilian Günther in 7th spot. He was hoping with Lance Stroll, his teammate, getting a puncture, that he'd be able to narrow the gap in the championship. Well, he did, but not by very much. And with Lance Stroll having had a puncture on the first lap of the race, it was a really frustrating second race, but he did win the first, a 7th victory of the season. So Lance Stroll looking, as we have said repeatedly this year, a real class act, now part of Williams' Formula 1 Team Junior programme. Good to go. The grid, I think, is complete, although we've had these engine changes, nobody with any major dramas. And Nick Cassidy was in the walls of it yesterday, had a big trip through the gravel. So the Kiwi, who's certainly not had the season anticipated of the reigning Japanese champion, struggled for 17th place yesterday, but has had a win this year. He won at Zandvoort. So he can do it, we know that, but it's been a trying season, and I think Nick will look back on this as a year lost, really, because although there are still 9 races to go, there's nothing he can do to fight back in the championship particularly. And with one of the top teams, the results should have been better. Guan Yu Zhao has moved from F4 to F3 for this year and drives for the Motor Park team, and has also looked impressive. So the Chinese driver there has had a couple of podium finishes, more at the start of the season than of late, in fairness, but he has gone rapidly. And Mikkel Jensen has also had a half-decent weekend because he got his best result of the year in race 1, but then crashed into his teammate in race 2. So a bittersweet weekend in a sense, but third in the opening race of the weekend, his first and only podium finish of the season thus far, his best result of the year thus far for the Danish driver, and suggesting that Muka can still kind of do it. It's a team that's perhaps not as strong as once it was, but on its day, it can still develop a good result. Ryan Tvita for the Carlin team, down on the grid, being wished well by the engineers. Ryan was involved in that big accident with his teammate in the end, Peter Lee, at the Red Bull Ring. And thankfully he's bounced back from that. The American who's raced single-seaters back home, but had a year in Formula Renault in Europe last year. Now 2 years ago, 2 years now in Formula 3. So he knows the circuit's looking stronger and stronger all the time. Nico Kari was last year's NEZ Formula 4 champion and has switched to a more powerful single-seater for this season. And he's going strongly. Some days better than others, admittedly, but it's all part of the learning curve. But he's another with the Red Bull backing, and that's not an organisation noted for its mercy, so he's got to start delivering. Harrison Newey is there on the grid. He's also, got Red Bull support, perhaps inevitable given Adrian Newey, his father's involvement in his Formula 1 operation. Harry Newey also had his best results of the season going back to the opening race, because he got 6th place. Pedro Piquet was 6th in race 2, another driver getting his best of the weekend. So a number of drivers enjoying better results over the course of the weekend as the championship moves on, and they become more experienced in the cars as well, so the results start to come with a little bit more experience. And Ralph Aaron may be flattered to deceive, because he was a race winner right at the start of the season. Going back to the early part of the year, he won the opening race at the Hungaroring, and after that missed a race at the Hungaroring because of an off on the warming up lap, and has struggled to get the results back on track since. Alessio Lorandi was the winner at Pau in the 3rd race, which meant he won the title of the Pau Grand Prix, and he too, in his 2nd year in Formula 3, like one or two others on the grid, showing better form, better progress being made this season. It's time to gather his thoughts before the cars are released onto the final warming up lap. Number 19 there is the Malaysian driver, Waron Tan, who came to Carlin partway through the season and has had a few moments, but is gradually starting to pick up his pace. And the next car on the grid is going to be the 3-bond with T-Sport car of Ukyo Sasahara. His father being a great Ukyo Katayama fan, hence not only the livery of Ukyo Sasahara's crash helmet, but also why he's called Ukyo himself. And having tested for the team a couple of years back, it's his first weekend with Russell Ecott's squad in Formula 3, and it's been a weekend all about learning, really, and gaining experience. Sergio Sette Camara has been on the podium here in the past, but has had a rather difficult weekend, and the engine change, because it broke on the last lap, or the penultimate lap of yesterday's race, it was right at the very end. He is condemned to start this race at the back, and the next 2 as well, at the Nürburgring. Not a circuit noted for its ease of overtaking, so big frustration, I'm afraid, for Sergio Sette Camara. So start further back on the grid, and the view you get is of more Dallara rear ends heading up to the hairpin at La Source. And the grid is formed, ready to go. The formation lap starting in 1 minute's time. So as the grid is now cleared, let's have a quick stroll down and see on pole position George Russell to the left. On his right is Joel Eriksson. Ben Barnicoat's red, white and blue car lines up alongside Callum Eilert. Then it's Antoine Hubert and Nikita Mazepin. David Beckman in the orange car is next. Max Günther alongside. Number 1 on the left is the championship leader Lance Stroll. Nick Cassidy, his teammate, ahead of Guan Yu Zhao in the red on the left. And then Mikkel Jensen. Red Bull colours for Nico Kari. Next on the grid, Ryan Tvita. Then you've got Harrison Newey and Pedro Piquet just on the right-hand side ahead of Ralph Aaron on the left. Alessio Lorandi next from Waron Tan. The white car of Ukyo Sasahara. Sergio Sette Camara is the last man on the grid, and his view looks a bit like that. Back up the pit straight towards La Source, and the cars in a moment will be released on to the final green flag lap. So the race director, in a moment, when he's got to the end of the final minute of the countdown, will give the command to wave the green flag, and the cars accelerate away. Hankook rubber used by everybody in this championship, so it's an opportunity to try and get some warmth into the tyres. And Sergio Sette Camara does get away, a little bit delayed, but he's away now on the run up towards the hairpin. So there's quite a bit of weaving around to put warmth into tyres. And from third on the grid, what can Ben Barnicoat do? Yesterday, he should have been fifth, and the pace that he showed once the car was willing suggested that it would have been a much better result. But it's now from third on the grid, an even better starting point than it would have been yesterday. What progress can be made from there? George Russell is on pole position, Joel Eriksson second, and Ben Barnicoat third on the grid. Callum Ilott starting fourth ahead of Antoine Hubert and Nikita Mazepin in sixth. David Beckman starting seventh, Maximilian Günther eighth, with Lance Stroll and Nick Cassidy to round out the top 10. Guan Yu Zhao is 11th on the grid for Motor Park, ahead of Mikkel Jensen. Ryan Tavita and Nico Kari are ahead of Harrison Newey and Pedro Piquet, with Ralph Aaron a long way back 17th. Alessio Lorandi, having had an electrical problem that affected all of his qualifying efforts, is 18th. Warren Tan, Ukio Sasahara and then Sergio Sette Camara round out the 21 cars that we have for this final race of the weekend in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Go, and speed building all the time. Then they have to stand on the brakes into the right-left flick of the pith path. There's Mikkel Jensen working his way into the next sequence of corners down at Le Col. The Carlin engineers get themselves ready. Carlin, a number of the top single-seater teams with a busy weekend, with other branches of the team in single-seater duty at the German Grand Prix this weekend, where GP2 and GP3 is in business. Warren Tan, the Malaysian driver then, starting 19th on the grid in number 19, turning his way now up towards Longchamp. And there is Alessio Lorandi making his way now up towards the grid. So is George Russell going to be able to make it 2 from 3? Yesterday, Joel Eriksson managed to get himself into the race lead. George Russell caught him, passed him, and then pulled away. It's not going to be easy necessarily for Joel Eriksson to defeat George Russell in this race. Ben Barnicoat, though, with another quick car run by High-Tech, might be in that mix as well. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be a George Russell benefit, especially if on the first lap the opposition is close enough to be able to slipstream past. Then the order starts to shuffle, and it really does give a different look to the race. Everybody's squirting the cars up towards the grid to try and put a bit of warmth and temperature back into the tyres and the brakes, ready for the all-important first lap. If you can make a break early on, it's going to stand you in very good stead indeed. The last driver to slot into place on the grid will be Sergio Sette Camara. Once he gets into place at the very back, we will be good to go. But Camara was lagging back quite a bit on the warming up lap, and he's lagged a long way back, so he gets into place now. Sergio Sette Camara is going to have to do a lot of work off the start here and around the first few laps of the race as the drivers wait for the lights to go red. It is round 21 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. 5 lights are on, lights go out, it's race time, and a good start made, not by Russell but by Barnicoat. George Russell bogged down badly, and so Joel Eriksson leads the way on the run up towards La Source, and George Russell's pole position absolutely wasted because the car barely moved at all for a split second, and so he's lost a great chunk of ground as the cars drop downhill for the first time. Joel Eriksson leads the way, and also coming into the mix, Callum Ilott trying to gain ground on the run down the hill. Then Barnicoat runs third as they dive through Eau Rouge for the first time. Up towards Les Combes they go. And how much ground has George Russell lost after that bad start? A lot of ground by the look of it. Nikita Mazepin is on his toes and also looking to gain places on the run up towards Les Combes now for the first time. Eriksson trying to defend. He's got cars coming every which way against him. Down they come to the braking area, but Eriksson stays in the lead of the race. Ben Barnicoat round the outside. Do they all survive? No, there's a spinner. Barnicoat gets airborne and he's off the road as well. Now, who was the one that spun? Was that Callum Ilott, maybe? Down they run towards Bruxelles for the first time. There's going to be a real sort out on the next shot to try and piece it all together when we get a shot of the race leaders. There's Günther, number 17, turning his way through. Barnicoat's got problems, that's for sure. He got airborne over the curb, but it looks like he suffered damage on landing as well. Downhill they go through Speaker's Corner. So Joel Eriksson was the one in the lead when they turned into Les Combes. There's another car looks slow going down the hill. Is that Barnicoat? I think it is. Ben Barnicoat's car with damage, slow down towards Pouhon. But up front, Joel Eriksson, the man that did have the advantage. Is he still leading the way? Looks as though he is. As in second place, Antoine Hubert, I think I'm right in saying, has got himself up in the second spot through the pith path. So down they come for the first time into Le Col. Mazepin runs third. There's Günther running in 5th place. He's also benefited off the start as the cars turn their way up now towards Francorchamps for the first time. And George Russell a long way back in the pack after that slow start, so his car just seemed to bog down, but others badly delayed in the skirmishes up at Les Combes. So where in the pack is George Russell? What can he do to fight back here as the leaders work their way up towards the bus stop? And there Max Günther and Nick Cassidy getting themselves together. Cassidy squeezed up over the curb and he goes through on the inside into the bus stop. Wheel to wheel with Günther, who ends up having to go very wide indeed, and George Russell is behind them. So Ericsson does indeed lead by 1.7 seconds ahead of Hubert. Mazepin is third, fourth is Lance Stroll, fifth is Günther, sixth is Cassidy, and that's now changed because Cassidy's ahead of Günther going into La Source. George Russell seventh over the line, Beckman eighth, Jensen ninth, De Vita in 10th, and Ben Barnicoat crawling round to the pit lane. So what should have been a good result for Ben, I'm afraid, is wasted, and it was Callum Islet that spun because he's down in 20th place, and Piquet was delayed and he's down in 19th, and that's Barnicoat's problem. Absolutely shredded tyre. So Ben Barnicoat for the pit lane as George Russell gets up the inside of Nick Cassidy. Max Günther gets a toe and tries to go between them if he can. He gets the toe off George Russell, gets stuck behind Nick Cassidy on the run up now towards Les Combes. Into the braking zone they go. And there you've got number 10, Nico Kari, off the road. He was round the outside of his teammate Guan Yu Zhao, and back onto the circuit now, staying just ahead of the Chinese driver. So down towards Bruxelles they run. Joel Eriksson, though, really gifted a big lead on the first lap of the race as there. Zhao up the inside of De Vita around Bruxelles. And the motor park car of Zhao get to the position as they drop downhill for the second time of asking. Eriksson 1.7 seconds to the good on that opening lap of the race. Round Paul goes Alessio Lorandi. The cars head downhill through that left-hander, and now there's the run up towards the right-left at the Piff-Paff. So Joel Eriksson versus Antoine Hubert. Eriksson unlucky at the Norris ring, unlucky to an extent yesterday, but he did take a equal best, second place of the year in that second race of the weekend here. And now, though, he's trying to make good his escape and make sure that he's out of slipstreaming range. If anybody else does push on and close, then hopefully he'll be so far up the road it doesn't do them any good whatsoever, and he can take a first victory. We've had, I think, 8 different winners, I'm right in saying, this year in the championship, as there through goes Harrison Newey, but this is the man of the moment. This is Joel Eriksson making his way for Motor Park down towards the bus stop. Volkswagen engine in that car. Mercedes has tended to be the power unit to have this season, but VW powering the car of Joel Eriksson as he comes up now over the timing line and heads off down once more towards La Source. Is the gap coming down? No, it's still about the same, 1.7 seconds, so he's not as yet coming under attack from the opposition. Replay of the start. Look, George Russell goes and then bogs down, and then it picks up. He tries to defend a little bit, but everyone swarms around him. So George Russell actually pretty lucky in the outcome that he's in 6th place. It could have been a whole lot worse than that. Have another look from a different angle. Out go the lights. Eriksson made a good start. Barnicoat dives out from behind him. George Russell's car sort of staggers away, but he loses a whole heap of places as the cars work their way down towards La Source. Barnicoat up alongside Antoine Hubert for second place. Hubert going through on the run into Eau Rouge, and then the climb up the hill towards Les Combes, where nose to tail they ran. But it was at the top of the hill where all the fun and games developed, and that has taken effectively Ben Barnicoat out of the race because he's a lap down after having to stop for a punctured tyre. So it was safe through La Source, it was good through Eau Rouge, but then the dramas all came at Les Combes, and so now the gaps have really opened up because that incident on the opening lap has broken up the pack. Nico Kari is one of those doing good sector times. David Beckman, we just saw a look at, is also trying to pick up his pace. There is Joel Eriksson, and the race leader working his way out of the Piff-Paff down now towards the right-hander at L'École, through which he will turn. There is Antoine Hubert. Now, can Hubert do anything about him? Is that gap going to come down sufficiently? Let's see. The answer seemingly is no. And what's happened to Mazepin? He's lost a place, I think. And we had a problem for Mazepin because he was late going through the middle sector. Lance Stroll, I suspect, has found a way past him. Yes, he has indeed. So Lance Stroll up into 3rd place now and hunting down the 2nd place car of Hubert. Stroll has done the fastest lap of the race. He's up into 3rd spot. And the way that he's going suggests that at least one more place is on the cards before the end. Lance Stroll, after struggling for setup in the qualifying session, started 9th, and here he is in 3rd place. So with the right opportunities, you can overtake around here in Formula 3. Down they head towards La Source once more, and Ericsson to Hubert is still 1.7 seconds. Stroll, though, is 0.6 quicker than the race leader. So a 2:12.176 now, the lap time for Lance Stroll. He's getting himself closer and closer and closer to, first of all, Antoine Hubert, but in real terms, the race leader as well. Through they climb, out of Eau Rouge, up once more towards Les Combes. Lance Stroll, number 1, becoming the man to watch. Behind him, 4th now, down a place, Mazepin. 5th, Cassidy. Russell is 6th, recovering after his pop start. 7th is Günther. 8th is Jensen. 9th is Beckman. And in the top 10 and in the points, Nico Kari. Now Stroll, look, he's absolutely on the back of Hubert going into Les Combes, so it won't be long before that starts to happen. I think that potential place change. There is Beckman and Kari together. That is for 9th, and Nico Kari goes through, round the outside, picks up the place. Dust settling ahead of them, and somebody's run wide. We've also now got Alessio Lorandi trying to join that battle pack as they go down towards Bruxelles. There, however, is Guan Yu Zhao turning his way out of Bruxelles and dropping downhill once more into the left-hander now at the so-called Speaker's Corner. So Zhao trying to get himself back onto terms with those ahead, try and retaliate if at all possible, but the real fascination is going to be Stroll versus Hubert now for 2nd place. Where can Lance Stroll make his move and find a way by? There you've got number 4, Alessio Lorandi then, out of the Piff Paff. The race leaders currently work lap number 4, 24 minutes to go. But Lance Stroll, having done the fastest lap of the race, closing up onto the back of Antoine Hubert. He's lost a little bit of ground since Les Combes, helped in part maybe to close on that run because of the slipstream effect. But with the amount of time left, I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to fight back before the end. Here they come now through the left-handed approach to the bus stop, and then it's hard on the brakes, into the right, into the left. We're about 4th place, Mazepin versus Nick Cassidy before the end of the race. That gap has come right down. Prema cars carrying the name also Theodore Racing, under which they run at Macau every year. Over the timing line now goes Mazepin. Cassidy is now from 6/10 back, a 1/5 of a second back. So it won't be long, I think, before the New Zealander tries to make a move. Not at La Source, though, because he knows if he sits tight, he's going to be able to make a run on the run up towards the Les Combes sequence of corners, and where the slipstream really does work around here. Nick Cassidy in the wheel tracks. Now the slipstream pays dividends for him, and he's got George Russell behind as well. So the high-tech cars, one loses out to Cassidy, and Russell goes round the outside of Mazepin as well as they get to Les Combes, right round the outside of his teammate. George Russell goes through, goes sideways, goes wide, goes off, and goes down a place. Nikita Mazepin back up and past him, so George Russell certainly committed, carried lots of speed into the corner, but just couldn't quite hold it together. So he's run wide, and that puts now Maximilian Günther there, number 17, right up onto his tail. Günther losing out again to Lance Stroll as far as the championship is concerned here, because that gap is going to widen between them with another good run being put in by Stroll. Have a look at Russell. Cassidy's already gone by. Russell to the outside, 2 wheels up on the curb, brakes as late as he dares. He does it, he goes round the outside, but then for the next part of the corner, he rides the curb and it just starts to unsettle, so he runs out wide, and that enables Mazepin to come back on the inside line. Also brings Maximilian Günther much, much closer on the run down towards Bruxelles. 22 minutes on the clock still, and the race leader is Joel Eriksson out on his own. This is the kind of race that a Formula 3 driver dreams of. Out ahead of the pack, no opposition, and being able to drive your own lines, control the pace. And Joel, who was the runner-up last year in the German F4 Championship with a really successful middle part of the season, had this great patch of victories, then started to fade away towards the end of the year when he was outpaced regularly by Marvin Dienst. It's been a bit of a pick and mix season as well. Some good races, some bad ones. This one of the better ones for sure, and he could be on target here for a first victory of the season. Battle on between Piquet and Callum Ilott, both of them recovering after losing time early on in the race. Ilott's difficult weekend not getting much better because he's down in 17th place. The leader goes through, and the gap is still hovering around the 1.7 second mark. It's neither coming up nor down, only by thousandths each time through. So the race leader's currently on lap number 6. who else from lower down might be expected to make some progress out of all of this? There's Ralph Aron in 13th place. Ryan Tavita's dropped down the order a little bit. What about Sergio Sette Camera from the back of the grid? 16th. Now, of course, that the gaps have opened up, life is much, much tougher for him to make any further progress. And Russell and Mazepin get together again. George Russell then was behind by 3/10 over the timing line. He's closing on the run up the hill. He's going to take the inside line and moves in front when they get to the braking area. This time, does it all hold together for him? Yes, it does. So George Russell goes through up into 5th place. It's still a race of what might have beens, though, as far as Russell is concerned, as the cars now accelerate their way down again to Bruxelles. This lap number 6, and we have got 21 minutes, give or take, still to run. Number 17, Max Günther, turns his way through Pouin, accelerates now down towards the Pif Paf. As they work their way through the right-left, number 12, George Russell, trying now to work his way a little bit closer to the pack ahead of him. Now, who's the next target going to be? It's going to be Nick Cassidy. So let's see how far he can get onto the back of Cassidy, how long it might take him in order to try and pick up another place. Lance Stroll, in the meantime, still leading the way. And, sorry, not leading the way, but still making progress in the fight. It is the championship situation. He's 3rd in the race, but he's getting away from hard-charging Nick Cassidy as they turn their way down through the bus stop this time. Now, the incident on lap 1 involving Callum Ilott and Ben Barnicoat is under investigation, we understand. I'm still a little bit puzzled by the pace of Lance Stroll relative to Antoine Hubert, because he's done the hard work to get close to him, but then he can't seemingly find that last little surge to get right onto the tail of him. But Stroll leads the championship. He is the best placed in the race of those thinking about championship points, and he runs 3rd at the moment. Behind him, we've got Cassidy and Russell. Now, that gap is 0.677 of a second here. George Russell closing a little bit further. Flings the car out of Eau Rouge. Mazepin has now got Günther up behind him for 6th place, so that's the next little battle to look for. Here they come. Nose to tail, with number 17 being Maximilian Günther. 11 is Nikita Mazepin, and they run together on the way now up towards Les Combes, and through goes Günther. He picks up the place. He goes 6th then, gets the toe, gets the speed, gets the place. Now, Günther yesterday faded as the tyres went off. Today he's gaining places as the field turns its way once again down towards that right at Bruxelles. And through the corner they will turn in a moment with a hard-charging Nick Cassidy doing his best to pull away from George Russell, but Russell it is who's got the fastest lap of the race, and again it's one of those big frustrations. It proves how quick he can be and makes you wonder what could have been but for the bad start. 18 minutes still to run as the cars work their way downhill. Ben Barnicoat soldiering on, incidentally. He's still out on track. He's 21st, but he's about half a lap adrift of anybody else, so he would need a safety car period, quite a long one, I think, to catch anybody now. So after the contact with Callum Ilott, frustration for him. Ilott himself is down in 19th place. We didn't really see quite what happened between them, other than Ilott spinning and Barnicoat, I think, having to go off in avoidance and rattle over the curb, but there must have been contact because there was the puncture that caused Ben to have to pit. Number 1 there, Lance Stroll, 7 times a winner in the championship this year, and he's not quite close enough, is he, to Hubert? He's been close, but he's not being able to now get right onto the back of him and think about making that all-important move up towards Les Combes. Now, there's another incident from the opening lap of the race under investigation, and it's the Alessio Lorandi Pedro Piquet coming together. Over the line goes Ericsson, and the gap has come down by half a second from 1.7 to 1.2. All of a sudden, Joel Ericsson's advantage looks a little bit more wobbly. So what is this that's happening? Was it a mistake? Is it the tyres going off? We need to start looking at sector times, because I think in the first sector he lost quite a chunk of time, but he also lost about 4/10 in the last sector as well. Is Joel Ericsson on borrowed time here? We have got just under 17 minutes of the race to go. As you look at Cassidy and Russell, this is the 4th and 5th places as they work their way now absolutely side by side up towards Les Combes. George Russell on the inside line claims the place. Nick Cassidy gets back into the draft and then uses that to pull back out and try and retake the place on the outside line. Can't do it. All the incidents from the opening lap are going to be investigated after the race, so if there are any penalties, they'll come much later. In the meantime, Ericsson's advantage down again by 6/10 in Sector 1. There you've got number 2, Nick Cassidy. So having fallen back into 5th place behind George Russell, Nick Cassidy perhaps might have to think about fending off his teammate before the end of the race, Max Günther. Whereas George Russell is absolutely flying now, and he's trying to get himself up with the top 3. Now, given that he's done the fastest lap, given that he was quickest in qualifying, that could be possible. The race leaders turn their way through the piff-paff. George Russell, you could argue, might be able to even win this, because if it's all concertinaing up ahead of him, there's a chance he's 4.8 seconds back. So that's the one to start to monitor now. 4.8 seconds first to 4th, and he is quicker than everybody ahead of him in the first sector. Sorry, first to 5th, I should say, is 4.8 seconds. George Russell now in the flying high-tech car. But Joel Eriksson, the race leader, lost time in Sector 1, gains a bit in fairness in Sector 2, so can he stretch the advantage? Was it a road lap, or is the situation turning against him? Down he comes towards the bus stop. 2nd and 3rd under braking. The margin comes down as Hubert sees Lance Stroll grow a little bit larger in the mirrors. Out of the bus stop they come, up now over the timing line. So Joel Eriksson's lap there is a 2:12.7, and the gap goes up again to a 1.5 seconds. So I think it was just a road lap with a mistake made in it. But George Russell in 4th place is 4.3 seconds back, so it is coming down 1st to 4th. Through goes Eriksson, then Hubert, then Stroll. 1st, 2nd, 3rd as they run to the bottom of the hill. Now, nobody yet close enough to think about using the slipstream against the race leader, but is Lance Stroll close enough to have a go yet at Antoine Hubert? Up to Les Combes they come in the background. Have a look at George Russell. He was 4.3 seconds back at the start of the lap. He is not yet close enough to benefit from the slipstream either, but he's not that far behind Lance Stroll. If he carries on pushing, and push he is, then he's got a chance of being there before the end. We've still got 14 minutes of the race to go. There is Antoine Hubert turning his way around Bruxelles. And the best of anybody in Sector 1, just done by Pedro Piquet. But again, that's if you get a toe. Suddenly you look really flash in that part of the lap. Stroll wide over the curb, coming out of Speaker's Corner now, down the hill. And working his way through that long, fast left at Pouhon. Now, Lance Stroll needs to be mindful that George Russell is not that far behind him. There, look, coming out of Pouhon. George Russell in 4th place. Nick Cassidy and then Max Günther 5th and 6th as they work their way now up towards the right and left. Through the piff-paff they go. George Russell in the middle sector has managed to gain a full second. There he is against Lance Stroll. So George Russell trying to make amends for that bad start. And he's going the right way about it, that is for sure. He's gaining places. He's done the fastest lap and taking a full second out in just one of the 3 sectors is a very, very significant move indeed. Down they come towards the bus stop. 13 minutes of the race remain now. So Joel Eriksson is the race leader. The gap is 1.7 seconds. Again, he's managed to stretch it back out over Hubert. But Stroll to Russell is down to 1.4 as they go down towards La Source into the bus stop. Lorandi and Sette Camera together. Sergio Sette Camera tries to go around the outside. Behind them is Ryan Tavita, who's dropped down the order a little bit over the course of this race. And Piquet has also been gaining ground ahead of this group because he's up into 14th place. Lorandi keeping at bay Camera. Big lockup by Piquet going down to La Source and by Lorandi as they work their way once again through the tight hairpin. So as they accelerate downhill, Alessio Lorandi it is, up front of this little group, and the incidents in turn 1 of lap 1, no further action, we understand, will be taken by the stewards, so just put down as racing incidents. Now there, look, is this great little scrap going on between, at the head of it, Lorandi, alongside him, Camera, and then Tavita next up. Camera here with a new engine as well, should be able to get up round the outside and gain the place. It's a long, long, long climb up towards Les Combes. Feet nailed to the floor, and round the outside goes Camera then to gain the place. But all of this effort is for 15th spot, not even in the points. Ryan Tavita in number 3 at the back of that little trio, working his way down once more towards Speaker's Corner and then on towards Pouhon as the cars continue on their way. Nico Kari there going through 8th, keeping the Nooker cars of Jensen and then Beckman behind him. So 11.5 minutes of the race still to run. And as the field turns its way into the Piff Paff, Nico Kari, again, having one of those almost there type races that we've seen from him this year. You know, he's in the top 10, but never really part of that leading group. Maybe a second year and all the experience would stand him in better stead, and he'll be a real factor next year. But as we saw a few years ago when Esteban Ocon and Max Verstappen arrived on the scene, if you do well in Formula 3 in your first year, then you really do stand out as a proper gun. Up towards the bus stop comes Joel Eriksson as the race leader. And what about George Russell? Can we get him onto the podium? The Force have been winning this. I'm not quite as convinced about now that Eriksson's lap times have started to stabilise, but he's certainly inching up onto the back of Lance Stroll. Can he do to Lance Stroll what he's done to others and get the place? And then can he find a way past Hubert that Stroll, as yet, has been unable to do, really? 10 more minutes of the race remain as the leaders go by. So they turn their way out of the La Source hairpin. The run down past the endurance pits, the compression at the bottom of the hill, up Eau Rouge they go, and then through Radion onto the Camel Straight up to Les Combes. This, a part of the circuit where if you're close enough, yes, you can use the slipstream, but looking at that leading gaggle, nobody really is in a position to do that. The gap, still 1.7 seconds between the top two. It's 8/10 Hubert to Stroll. That's the one that I keep expecting something to happen from, and it ain't doing so. Gunter, Mazepin, and then Kari are the next group. Nico Kari has worked his way onto the back of Mazepin. So after the fuel pump dramas of yesterday, Nikita Mazepin trying to take points out of this race. There is Nico Kari, 8th place for the Formula 4 Northern European Zone champion of last year, down the hill towards Caen once again. 9.5 minutes on the clock still, as the cars will turn their way through that fast left at the bottom of the hill. And then the run towards the Piff Paff. That, remember, is the race leader. So Joel Eriksson controlling this. He did have that one lap where he seemed to be losing pace, but now it's all swung back in his favour. It's all looking pretty good for him as he turns his way again round Les Cols. Having said it looks good for him, he then runs wide and rattles over the curb, but I think he can get away with that. Doesn't go into the gravel, doesn't spin, doesn't slide off. He just gets it all back under control and pushes on. In the first sector, he was being caught a bit by Hubert. In the second sector, he's pulled away again. So his rather elasticated lead gap continues to be so. Into Blanchimont they go now. Callum Ilett's in the pit lane, by the way. So after his spin early on, the British driver has had to pit. And it could be that that is the end of the day, because in 19th place, we're not gaining anything, you're not going to get any points. So Callum Ilett, sad to say, looks like he's a retirement. Over the timing line comes Joel Eriksson. Antoine Hubert, a second and a half back this time. And what does first to fourth give us from 4.8? It's down to 3 seconds, so it is all concertinaing up with 8 minutes to go, but is it enough time left for George Russell to make further strides? Because even if he catches people, he's still got to overtake, and there's time lost in doing so. He's not just going to breeze onto the tail and drive straight past. He's going to have to work for it. But look, he's almost on the back of Stroll, and Stroll pushing on again. He's on the tail of Hubert. So as they work their way towards Les Combes now for second and third places, is finally it game on between the two. Lance Stroll is close. He's in the draft, is he? Yes, Hubert defends. Lance Stroll goes to the outside line. If they delay themselves, and they are doing so by squabbling, this will play right into the hands of George Russell. Through Les Combes they come. And Hubert not looking that shabby against Eriksson. He's 4/10 closer as well. So it is still concertinaing up first to fourth. Down towards Bruxelles they come this time. Through that downhill hairpin, and then on towards the left-hander at Speaker's Corner. Everybody running out wide over the curb there, but Lance Stroll in third place, much closer last time, and really for the first time having a proper bid to get past Antoine Hubert for his second place, which was not to be, however. And as the cars turn their way down towards the Piff Paff this time, look how much closer George Russell there is to Lance Stroll in third position. Through the right, through the left, on now down towards Les Cols once again, and George Russell is virtually there. Now Lance Stroll has certainly matured as a driver in the last 12 months, and Lance perhaps will be of the opinion, perhaps, that he can't, for whatever reason, find the pace to challenge Hubert. is it worth defending like mad and getting involved in a battle and perhaps risk losing any points, or letting the quicker car go, settling for fourth and still banking the points by being ahead of Maximilian Gunter? We'll see how this pans out now as the cars turn their way up towards the bus stop, because certainly Stroll is going to have to start defending. Russell is almost there on his tail as the race leader comes up towards the timing line. Joel Eriksson then looking for a first win, second, third, fourth, all close together. The gap between the top two is a second and a half. Hubert to Stroll is half a second. Stroll to Russell is 4/10. Down they go into the hairpin at La Source. And now the run once more downhill. Now is George Russell close enough to try to make a move this time on the run up towards Les Combes? He's closing, so too is Lance Stroll against Antoine Hubert, but of course they're running out of time now. There are 5 3/4 minutes plus a lap to go. George Russell inching up onto the back of Lance Stroll, but Stroll not as close this time as he was a lap ago. So Hubert's able to hang on to the place. Lance Stroll closes at the breaking point, but another 4/10 taken out at that part of the circuit from Eriksson's advantage by Hubert. If he doesn't have to worry about Stroll, he might be able to bring the gap down a bit more to the leader. Certainly George Russell is pushing and pushing hard, look, because he's getting up onto the tail of the third place man Lance Stroll again as they head down the hill. Through Pouhon, Russell a little bit wide, but Stroll was wide ahead of him, so both of them kind of get away with it, and any gain or loss negated really, because they were both doing it. But look now how Stroll has dropped away from Antoine Hubert. If Hubert can really gird up his loins and go after the race leader, he's got a chance. There's just about enough time to go, but George Russell for the podium is perhaps as good as it's going to get for him now. He's not quite on the back of Stroll, but it's been a really good recovery after that duff start. Out of L'École they come towards the Cours Paul Frère. There is number one, the championship leader, Lance Stroll. You've got to say, at the moment, given the way that he is being so consistent and others are not, it's rather hard to see him not winning the championship this year. And if he's using his brain and thinking about points, if Russell gets really close to him, it may be that he's prepared to let him go. As I say, down towards the bus stop they come, 4 minutes plus a lap. Lance Stroll turns right, turns left, accelerates up past the Prema Power Team engineers on the pit wall, and the high-tech car of George Russell is right behind him. The leading gap is still hovering around a second and a half. It's come down fractionally this time, but then Hubert to Stroll 6/10, and George Russell still 4/10 back in that fourth place. So George having another go. He needs to be quick down the hill. He needs to get close so that he can make the move on the run up towards Les Combes. He knows this because it is the key part of the lap in a Formula 3 car. But Stroll, I would suggest, is just not close enough to Hubert, nor is George Russell near enough to Lance Stroll. So it's all great in theory. Executing it is a little bit harder. Here they come now on the run along the Camel Straight in towards the right, left, right sequence at Les Combes. Number one, Lance Stroll for Prema Power Team. Took his first win at the end of last season at Hockenheim. Has taken 7 of them this year. You can see why. Therefore, he is the championship leader. And George Russell seems to close, but in all the wrong places. He gets close here, where he can't do much about him, but he doesn't stay close enough for the key part of the lap, where he's got to try and make that move on the run up towards Les Combes once again. So it's all a case of knowing where the strengths are. Also, perhaps there's a difference in the downforce setup of the two cars here. Some being better suited to one part of the track than others. So Lance Stroll is able to stretch the margin, and then through the twisty bits, it seems, George Russell brings the gap down. But here at the pit path, does Stroll look a little bit nearer to Hubert? Maybe the eyes play tricks, but second, third and fourth there look a little bit nearer to one another. There's the leader, Joel Eriksson. So there's probably time for one more lap within the time allowance at the end of this, and then the regulation lap at the end. So 2 to go as they turn their way around Cours Paul Frère once more. Now again, Russell here looks quick. We saw a great move in a Formula Renault race early on in the day to go around the outside to gain a place at Spa-Francorchamps, but George Russell not really close enough to Lance Stroll to think about it, but he might be able to have a run up the inside of the bus stop. But from here on in, if he can't make the move, he's got to stay in the wheel tracks and maintain the pace all the way up to Les Combes. He does challenge on the inside line, and he goes through. Runs a little bit wide, but he comes out successfully. Lance Stroll drops down into 4th place. Lance, as I was suggesting earlier, may have thought I'll let him go here. This could be a bit leery, but he fights back on the way down towards La Source. But George Russell, with a good late-out braking move, up into third place. So he's third, and he's 2.6 seconds away from the race leader. Can he get there in time? I'm not convinced he can, but he's going to have a real go now. Lance Stroll not able to find a way past Antoine Hubert in this race. Now we'll see whether things will change as far as George Russell is concerned, assuming even he can catch up in time. Nose to tail, they make the run now, up towards Les Combes, and Lance Stroll gets the place back, uses the slipstream. George Russell cleverly gets back into the draft nice and early. Is he going to be able to pull out at the last moment? Yes, he is. He tries to go back round the outside, which he does. George Russell back through, round the outside into third place. Good racecraft there by both of them, but George Russell is the one that comes out on top, retakes third place, but by squabbling, of course. Look, he's lost a chunk of time again against Antoine Hubert with one more lap to run at the end of this as they come out of Bruxelles now. So Joel Eriksson, while all these little battles have been going on, still leads the way. Getting a replay here of the overtake. George Russell desperately late on the brakes, arms twirling inside the car as he tries to hustle it into the right line, but he comes out successfully to take third position. Have a look at it from this angle. Gets the toe and suddenly thinks, I've got to go for it. Stands on the brakes, the car quivering, the correction applied by the driver, but George Russell goes through, hangs onto a slide and hangs onto the place. A good effort that, and he's gone through then to pick up third place. So there'll be one more lap at the end of this, as you see the replay of how, having got third place back, Stroll lost it again. George Russell back round the outside. So Lance Stroll, quick through Blanchimont, trying to get himself onto the tail of George Russell, and he tries to make a move up on the inside. Is it going to be on as even? No, because George Russell, even with a wheel on the dirt, just about scrabbles through ahead of him, manages to hang on to the place. So we're on to the final lap of the race as they come out of the bus stop. The lead gap is 1.4 seconds, but Hubert looking safe in his second place. So down towards La Source they go, and nose to tail for third position, but it looks as though Joel Eriksson is going to be the 10th different winner. I'd ignored Nick Cassidy's Zandvoort win a moment ago when I tried to do a crude calculation, so we've got 9. It'll be a 10th different winner of the season in the person of Joel Eriksson, assuming he can hang on in there as the cars power their way up towards Les Combes for the last time. And again in the slipstream, Lance Stroll pulls out, makes his move right round the outside, goes ahead of George Russell, who gets back into the draft. Remember what he did a lap ago. Is he going to be able to do it again this time? Will Stroll be wise to the move? George Russell up to the outside line, right round the outside, retakes third place. Great racing between them. And that is exactly the last opportunity to gain a place, really, because the rest of the lap is very, very hard to secure a place around, and it means that George Russell has done it just in the nick of time. So Lance Stroll slipstreams his way ahead, but couldn't then break the toe, and it means that George Russell does bag third place as the cars drop downhill once again. So through they turn into Pouhon for the final time. Joel Eriksson 1.4 seconds ahead of Antoine Hubert starting this lap. George Russell for third, Stroll, then Cassidy, then Günther to round out the top 6. But another very lively race it has been. Not, though, for Joel Eriksson. There he is. He's not put a wheel wrong, I think, apart from one little wide running coming out of that corner a while ago. And he has certainly been able to recover and make good his escape. So an excellent drive this by Joel Eriksson, who leads the way now, and he's run for the last time up towards Blanchimont. The checkered flag is going to be made ready. Round 21 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship is about to be won by Joel Eriksson, who works his way right and then left up towards the timing line. And Joel Eriksson it is going to be a 10th different winner in the championship this season, who crosses the line to win. Second goes the way of Antoine Hubert. For third place, it is George Russell. Fourth should be Lance Stroll across the timing line. And then for fifth place, Nick Cassidy ahead of Maximilian Günther. Then Kari, Mazepin, Jensen and Beckman to round out the top 10. And the Muka cars go over the line almost side by side, just 0.4 of a second between them. Checkered flag is waved as the final handful of cars come over the line. Lots of hard luck stories like Pedro Piquet 14th, Camara 15th from the back of the grid. But the real problems, of course, for Ben Barnicoat and Callum Ilott having tangled at the start of the race, and some wonderful racing between Lance Stroll and George Russell. And this on the last lap, round the outside, having lost the place, gaining it back again. George Russell shows how you overtake in Formula 3, but a great fight between them. So had it been more of a problem for Joel Eriksson, I think the time lost would have made him prey to the opposition, but it was just a rogue lap. So in the end, he comes home the winner, and actually 1.6 seconds was the margin. Antoine Hubert settling for second on that last lap, but a very important, very significant win for Joel Eriksson. That it has been a long time coming. And so as the drivers make their way out of the cars in Parc Fermé, Joel Eriksson stands on top of the Motor Park de Lara and will make his way in a moment or two towards the Parc Fermé and then to the podium. The Timo Rumpkar's team, it's a very important win, that, because it's another team getting up towards the pointy end of the grid. It's been rather dominated, this championship, in the past by the likes of Carlin and Prema Power Team. Then Van Amersfoort had its great run with Max Verstappen and then Charles Leclerc last year. Callum Ilott has been a race winner for the team this season as well, carrying on that good pace. But from the championship's point of view, it's good to see other teams coming forward and having success, because it proves that, yes, you can come and race in this. It's not all about the Carlins, the Premas, for example. So as Nico Kari walks away from the technical area, Harry Tinknell there, having had a word with George Russell. Harry doing lots of driver coaching for some of the Formula 3 field, and will be, I'm sure, if he's agreeable, brought onto the podium to present the trophies, as it happened in the past as well. Confirmation of the way they crossed the line. Joel Eriksson, the winner from Antoine Hubert. Third, going the way of George Russell after his bad start from pole. Fourth, Lance Stroll ahead of Nick Cassidy. Then Maximilian Gunter, Nico Kari, Nikita Mazepin. The point scorers rounded out by Mikkel Jensen and David Beckman. 11th place, the first of those that goes away pointless. Guan Yu Zhao ahead of Harry Newey. Ralph Aaron 13th. 14th to Pedro Piquet. Sergio Sette Camara taking 15th spot ahead of Ryan Tavita. Alessio Lorandi 17th. Then it's Wairan Tan from Ukiya Sasahara. Ben Barnicoat, after, again, a race that really should have delivered more, ends up 20th after having to pit for a new tyre. And 21st, going the way of Callum Ilott in terms of distance covered, but he was a driver to retire early after being tapped into that spin, or being involved in the spin up at the top of the circuit on the opening lap of the race. Let's look back at some of the best bits as the drivers set off on their green flag lap. A last chance to get some temperature into the tyres. When the lights went out, though, George Russell's car completely bogged down. He did stagger away, but a huge amount of time lost. From a different angle, you can see that as the cars were given the signal to go, so he had to try and defend as the car sort of went, hesitated, and then picked up pace, and it gave George Russell a lot of work to do. From 6th, he had to carve his way up the order. First of all, he got past teammate Nikita Mazepin round the outside going into Le Con. Next target was Nick Cassidy, and he sorted out the Kiwi on the run up the Kemmel Straight. Up front, though, Joel Eriksson was the dominant man, pulling away from the opposition. And the battle continued all the way through the field as drivers tried to gain ground wherever possible. Russell's key moment, though, was up the inside of Lance Stroll, dive-bombing him at the bus stop, just hung on to the sideways car. Stroll was able to tow himself back into the place, and George Russell returned the favour straight away, used the tow round the outside and got himself back up into third spot. The two carried on trading the place until the checkered flag, but it was George Russell ahead when it counted. And so, a win for Joel Eriksson then. He becomes the 10th different driver to stand on that top step of the podium this year, and significantly, remember, he's in his first year. So he is the winning rookie as well as the winning overall driver. And Joel Eriksson, finally, with that proverbial monkey off his back, I think we're feeling a lot more confident for the remainder of the season. And so then, we have the drivers being made ready behind the podium. And so now, Joel Eriksson steps forward. His first outright win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. For second place, Norris Ring winner Antoine Hubert. And then for third spot, it will be George Russell after pole position. Not the greatest of starts, but a good recovery for the high-tech GP driver.
The winning team, I think it's the
And then
first time
the
this year.
Motor Park team for a maiden victory this year, represented on the podium. Timo Rumpfeil's team taking victory. And Joel Eriksson, the winner of round 21 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship from here at Spa-Francorchamps.
Swedish national anthem, please. Hymne national suédois.
So the drivers on the podium, and now for Joel Eriksson, there will be the Swedish national anthem.
Hymne national suédois, s'il vous plaît.
In a moment, there will be a national anthem.
Désolé, monsieur, sorry, Joel, it seems. Dernier essai. Please, the Swedish national anthem. No. Very
And the
sorry.
band is reluctant to play, so
I will try.
frustratingly, but apologies to Joel Eriksson, who was offered the chance to sing it, but declines. But now we have it.
Let's go. Okay, Felix Rosenqvist.
So for Joel Eriksson, eventually we have the Swedish national anthem, and he is on the top step of the podium.
Felix Rosenqvist is also a Swedish driver.
With last year's overall champion being Swedish, as well, Felix Rosenqvist. The Swedes continuing a good trend in this, and there is indeed last year's champion himself, Felix Rosenqvist, steps onto the podium, takes the trophy. There's a lack of certainty that that actually was the Swedish national anthem, but hey, it was a musical interlude before the trophies were presented. So Felix Rosenqvist, last year's champion, was very impressive the other night in the night qualifying and then the Super Pole for the total 24 hours of Spa. He's racing here for Mercedes, having of course had Mercedes power in the Formula 3 Dallara he won the championship with last year. So Felix racing single-seaters as stateside this year, and GT cars in Europe. And George Russell's demeanour tells the story, doesn't it, of one that got away. It was a decent recovery, but that is an air of resignation, that he knows that he should have converted that pole position into a race win. So the drivers will huddle together for the photographs, and Motor Park taking the race win. Harry Tinknell joining Timo Rumpfeil and Felix Rosenqvist for the group photograph. Harry, of course, a very rapid sports car racer these days, but was a pace setter in Formula 3 going back a few years in both the British and European races. And there, Felix Rosenqvist on the far left, last year's champion. So everybody, I think, is done with the cameras. It means that there's now finally the chance for the champagne. Not sure that George Russell necessarily will feel like celebrating. No, picks up the bottle. And is he going to join in? Yeah, rather grudgingly, I think. But Joel Eriksson savouring the moment. He scores his first win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. He is very happy indeed about that. And so, honours for Joel Eriksson at the third final race at Spa, round 21 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. So, the advantage in the title race for Lance Stroll continues. Next stop is going to be the Nürburgring in September. From Spa, from David Addison for now. Bye-bye.